Observe.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Observe and Rapport show, episode number 3. You're with Kyle Brennan, and as always, my beautiful co-host and producer, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how are we doing?
Beautiful co-host and producer. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, pal.
Yeah.
That was really nice of you.
Yeah.
How was your? Not much. How was your Thanksgiving?
It's good. It's good. We did our usual, crazy
Yes.
Thanksgiving football.
How was it?
It was good. Our team sucked, but
Really? Whose fault was it?
numbers people. I won't throw people on the
Oh
bus.
shit!
But it was fun. It was great. But I realized I can't recover from football like I used to.
Dude, listen.
It's getting old.
We're 30, and even this shit. It's just, is it even worth it anymore? I mean, drinking to that point. I mean, I have a wedding later. I know I'm gonna get hammered. We talked about weddings last time. I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna act like an asshole. The next day, I've got a birthday party that you're going to. But it's kind of a tradition now to be hungover for her birthdays, particularly. We were last year. We were hungover for that. So, but man, it's true that 30 hits and you're like, I can't recover from sports, working out, drinking. It's a whole different story.
Well, have you ever heard of Tim Urban? He's a blogger. Like, he's been on podcasts and stuff. So he has a blog called Wait But Why. He's probably one of my favorite follows on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever, but his blog, he doesn't post that often. It's just about like life, and he does like dumb little stick figure drawings to like represent different things. It's really cool.
Okay.
But his most famous article is called The Tail End, and he talks about the shortness of your life and measuring it not in time, but rather in activities and events. So he goes, we're 30 years old, 31, 30. The average person, if they're lucky, will live to 90. That means you have 60 summers left.
Right.
And like he starts going down the list of like, you maybe, how many times a year do you go to the beach? Once or twice? That means you have 60 to 100 times at the beach left in your life. And then, once you're 30, you move out, or, when you're 20, you move out of your parents' house. Your parents are, 60. Maybe you have, if you're lucky, an overlapping 30 years left with them. In that 30 years, how many times do you see them each year? If you see them 10 times, that means you only have 300 times left with your parents. And he just goes down this list, and it makes you sad.
Yeah,
because you realize how finite life is. He's like, if you're a Yankees fan, you may only, and you go to one game a year. That's 60 Yankees games left. And he just goes down the list, and you're just like, fuck.
Yeah. That reminded me just now what you just said. We'll get back to it, but I heard someone said, one day you're going to put down your kid for the last time or something, or you're going to pick them up and put them down for the last, and then after that, there is going to be one time where it's like you just don't pick them up ever again.
Yeah, that's like, there's a similar meme or something. It's like one day was the last time like you and all your friends like hung out together or something.
That's a really Tim Urban. Wow, there's a fruit fly.
It's I think I post it like every year. It's called The Tail End.
The Tail End.
On just Google Tim Urban, The Tail End. The blog is called Wait But Why. But follow him on Twitter, follow him on Instagram. He has like really just funny, introspective looks on life and like drawings that make you think. But that one will fuck you up and make you realize like how important it is to like live near your family and the people you love.
Dude, that's so true.
2, like to prioritize like the shit that you want to do the rest of your life because you don't have many opportunities. And 3, like, having quality relationships with the people because you may not see them. You may not have that many times, relatively speaking, to hang out with them. So
it's happened a lot in the past few years of my life. Like, I'm like, oh man, that was the last time I saw that person, or am I ever going to see that guy again? Like, that's so true. To measure your life in activities and events rather than just like, oh, I've got 50 years. Yeah, but depends on how often you do certain things in that 50 years. I had a good quote from, I think it was Jordan Peterson. He said, the little things aren't little at all. Like, the little things matter more than the big things in a way because that's the stuff you do every single day. So like dinner with the family, picking up your kids from school. Like, how good are those moments? Because if those suck, then your life sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making those little things that aren't so little as good as they can be, right?
Yeah. I saw a similar quote from it's like some billionaire guy, like CEO of a tech company, entrepreneur or something. And he said, he was on a podcast, and someone asked him the question of like, do you think you're successful? You've made all this money, you've created all these businesses. Are you successful? And he's like, the cliche of like, the money doesn't matter, whatever.
Right.
You expect that. But what he said was, the way I measure my success, he's like, I'm now, 60 or 70 years old. My kids are 30. They're married with kids. The way I measure success is, do my kids still want to hang out with me? And he's like, do they reach out to me? Is it not like a labor for me? Do they look to hang out with me and enjoy hanging out with me? He's like, that's the measure for me of a successful life. And I'm like,
that's a good, you gotta chalk it up to something. That's a good sentence to kind of just, relate to it all.
Yeah.
I heard a guy the other day, he goes, I want to be famous at home. I want to be like, oh, dad. Like that's my measure of, again, another super successful millionaire. And, money doesn't make you happy. But what's that great Daniel Tosh line? It's hard to frown on a jet ski or something.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Frown on a jet ski.
But at a certain point, I think there's data and literature on that. Like, after your basic needs are met, shelter, food, water, relationships, stuff like that, people who make more money than it requires for those things to be in a good place, they're really not happier than anybody who, makes $80K a year as opposed to $800K. So, and that's because money's material, it's true. But yeah, if your relationships are in order and your day to day, you don't have to be rich to be happy. That's a fact.
Yeah, and that article puts it into perspective, like 1,000%.
What's his name again?
Tim Urban.
Tim Urban.
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, literally, like, we make comfortable amounts of money. Obviously, if we made an extra $100K or $200K, we'd
fantastic.
be amazed, right? But but you tend to fill your life to the money you're making.
Right.
You'll find a way
exactly
to spend, unless you're super smart and frugal, and you're just like,
more money, more problems.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretend I didn't make that money, and I'm gonna put it in savings and be smart.
Yeah, okay.
But like, no one does that. Right?
No,
they're gonna be like, oh, now I can afford all the shit that I want. But like, that shit, I know that's also cliche. It's like the material shit doesn't make you happy.
Right.
But it really is. It's like the quality of time and the quality of the friendships and the relationships you have. And
yeah,
it's so easy to blow off plans with your friends. Like, if you're tired after the end of the week and you're like, oh,
it feels great though,
dinner.
Doesn't it?
It does, but then, like,
great.
It's rare that you regret,
no, it's true.
That effort,
If you just go and do it like anything else, like the gym or whatever, once you get there, you go, all right, just give me a few beers. I'll be,
It's just that getting over that hump of like, I got to put on an outfit. I got to like get ready and like commute to wherever it is in the city, or like.
To the money thing though, it's like, it's true. You ever talk to someone who owns a boat? They're like, God, I can't believe this stupid this boat sucks. And you're like, but truly, you're going to buy a Ferrari with it. It's going to break down. It's going to be a pain in the ass. It doesn't mean anything. It's the truth.
Yeah, your life will fill itself with more problems, always.
Yeah, so, like it's relative, The fucking yacht thing sucks, So what are you reading?
I was going to ask you. You go first.
Well, I finished The Master and Margarita. I talked about that book on the last episode.
Russian novel.
The Russian novel by Mikhail Bulgakov. Honestly, dead honest, it's got to be one of my favorite books of all time now. It's not like my favorite, but it's one of my favorites for sure.
How many pages?
591 or something like that.
You read it on paperback?
Paperback, of course. Yeah, I don't really pay attention to the number, but it's a big one. It's a long book, I suppose, but it's not like Lord of the Rings long. But I don't want to get into the story as so much. I want to get into what happened at the end, because we could do a whole podcast about the plot. But at the end, I mentioned that Satan makes an appearance in Moscow, right? And long story short, he wreaks havoc while he's there and leaves at a certain point. And the people of Moscow chalk everything that happened up to, it was mass hysteria and mass hypnosis. That's what all that was. All that crazy, ridiculous, impossible stuff that happened while, that was all mass hysteria. And it got me thinking how funny that is. And it got me thinking of past occurrences where mass hysteria was the only, reasoning for it. It's funny that there have been things that have happened where the only rationale is, I guess everybody just went crazy at the exact same time. Like, how is that even an option? Like, that's like, people go, oh, yeah, mass hysteria. No, I don't think that's real, dude. Like, sometimes things happen in the world where the only explanation, I guess everybody just went crazy. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, do you give examples?
So examples are, well, there's a lot of examples, but famous ones are, there was, Kyle, there's a list of them. Like, there's hundreds of them a famous one is like the dancing sickness back in the medieval times. For some reason, for like 10 years, they couldn't stop dancing. They would dance until they died from exhaustion. And nobody could figure out why this was happening. They just chalked it up to, everyone's just crazy. I don't know.
When you say mass, do you mean like a whole population or like everyone in the world?
So mass hysteria is when a big group of people all start acting crazy for no reason, apparently. Or they also have mass hypnosis or mass delusion, where a lot of people will report seeing something or hearing something or experiencing a phenomenon, and no one can prove it, so they just go, oh, well, everybody just went crazy, that's all. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me, like, and it makes me think, are there like aliens out there that have visited and they're like, dude, we've been trying to like talk to you guys for, we've been talking, we want to communicate, we want to collaborate in the universe, we want to let you know there's life out there, but every time we talk to somebody, someone talks to him and they just go, oh, he's crazy. Like, what do you want us to do? You know what I mean? Like, all these examples of mass hysteria. There was one where, in a boarding school in Japan, all these girls started just fainting and screaming, dancing on the bed, hitting their head against the walls, and there was no explanation for this. Like, it was the whole school. And again, mass hysteria. Everybody, or a demon walked into the school and possessed all the kids. Like, how do you know that those things aren't real? Like, you know what I mean? And that's what was so great about this book, because fiction, although it's not factual, it's not listing facts along the way like other books, it does open up your mind to, like, things that happen for real, and you go, what the fuck is that? Mass hysteria. There was one in Italy where dude, I'm talking about thousands, like tens of thousands of people witnessed like the coming of the Virgin Mary out of the sky with the sun and the discs and the golden fire, and like her like she was an apparition, and everybody was crying and like laying on the ground, and like, it went away, and then everybody in Italy, like they tried to tell everybody, but everyone's like, nah, mass hysteria. You know what I mean?
As you're talking about that, I was thinking of a few different things. I feel like one, typically those events, not always, but typically they come from some form of cult, right? So like you see it a lot in some of these weird like commune type cults where the leader always tends to like say he needs to bang your wife.
Yeah, they always end up fucking
to convert,
your wife.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one. The other is there's a paradox. I don't remember what it's called, but basically like the crowd effect, or it's it's called like the mass effect, right? Where if you see someone faint right in front of you on the sidewalk, you're obviously going to help them. Right. But if you're in a crowd of 10,000 and you see someone faint, you're less likely to help, right? So you're almost like mass ignoring things, or mass just like acting in the same way because you assume somebody else will do it. And there's that famous story of, I think it was in like Harlem in the city, like maybe like 50 years ago, where a woman was getting stabbed to death, like brutally, and the entire street could hear it. Because they all, like, their windows open, people were hanging on the stoop, but no one called 911 because they all assumed someone else would do it. I thought of that, and then the third one I thought of, which is kind of the opposite effect of that, and they do these studies like groupthink, right? So if you were in a group, like a school project with like 6 other people, and they gave you, a bunch of crayons or something, and you were like, oh, let's use this red one. But then 5 people in the group were like, that's not red, that's purple. Right? And then you're like, no, it's definitely red. But then they're so convinced, like, no, it's purple. And then like the teacher comes over and like, no, it's purple.
Yeah.
Then you start going like, oh yeah, it's purple.
Right.
Just to not, stir the pot.
Yes.
So there's like, I think those are 3 possible explanations.
Yeah. Or demons are real.
Or demons.
And possession happens. Like, I'm just saying
Well,
they can't prove to come up with. It's so like not scientific.
Yeah, but have you heard of like each individual case? Probably, if you dig deep enough, and I'm sure there's like a serial podcast on like some of these ones.
Sure.
I'm sure each individual one has like its own unique explanation. Like, you've ever heard of Lyme disease?
Yeah.
How that started?
Yeah, Lyme, Connecticut.
Yeah, Lyme, Connecticut. They thought the kids were like possessed.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know what the disease was,
Right.
and they found out, it was they were getting it from ticks from the deers, basically.
Right. It just seemed lazy. Mass hysteria. Everyone just went crazy. That's all. It's like, because look, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go on TV and you're gonna tell everybody that aliens are real, or that Azazello the demon possessed all these kids in Japan. Like, I get it. You got to make up something, right? Something happened. You don't know what happened, but let's just call it that. The groupthink thing is real though, because I saw an experiment once where a girl was a subject in an experiment. She didn't know. She was like, she didn't know that this experiment was going on. It was in a false room with a false waiting room and actors and whatever. And the actors were all just sitting there in a waiting room, normal. And on cue, they all had like this band around them that would vibrate. And whenever it vibrated, they would all stand up for 5 seconds and then sit back down. And obviously the girl's like,
yeah.
What? And then she didn't do it the first time, but then they did it again. And then she stood up. And then when they sat back down, she sat back down. And then she just started doing it again because she doesn't want to rock the boat. So I understand that can happen, and that people start to, copy people around them. It just happens. But, I don't know. I'm just saying.
I think
we don't know everything.
Well, there's like the human psychology explanation, right? Where we all have tendencies as humans that we can't override, like that experiment you just talked about, where it's just like, because we're tribal in nature, we kind of find ways to protect ourselves and make sure that we're not cast out, right? Because if she didn't stand, she would be the enemy potentially, right? And like,
she's the
that's ingrained
zebra with the red paint on.
There's a lot of those like paradox isn't the right word, but a lot of those like biases in our head where we think, certain things, even though we know by logic it's not the right thing. But then there's also the mystical or like ethereal explanation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like Carl Jung and the, what does he call it? The something subconscious.
Well, the shadow.
He has the belief, and I may be butchering it. I think you read more Jung than me. But the global subconscious. How we all have kind of a collective subconscious.
You just got it. It's the collective. The collective unconscious.
Unconscious, yeah.
Yeah. But your subconscious mind, breathe in union. He think, we all breathe together. We all affect. There's a great guy, Arthur Koestler. He wrote a book in the 60s called The Ghost in the Machine. And that's a lot to do with your soul, so to speak. That's what, that's like a little saying to represent the soul, the ghost in the machine, which is our bodies. And he talks about how at the end of the day, there's really no escaping the fact that we're all part of, we are how a bunch of ants are a collective life force. They're like an amoeba. They become a bigger thing because they're all working together.
I think we're the same thing.
We are the same thing. And it's a great book about that. I mean, like, he starts the book like talking about the molecules and like the atom that makes up who you are. And the last page, he basically comes to the conclusion that it's only a matter of time before we all kill ourselves with nuclear weapons. Like, I mean, it's a little scary because like the guy's probably right in a way, and but yeah, like at the end of the day, we're connected. You can't get around that,
And there's the famous example of like how multiple different cultures across the world at the same exact time built pyramids, right? Like, how do you
like, what is that all about?
Yeah, like there's plenty of examples of things like that with fungus. They've done experiments with like how they communicate like electronically or electromagnetically from like one part of the world to another. Just like, I think there's studies on rats who were able to like find a new way of finding food in California, and then the rats in like Asia also developed that same like sense somehow.
It's incredible. Bees
I mean,
do that. Bees communicate across thousands of miles.
There's
somehow.
so much stuff that we just have to be.
Have you heard, man, about how spiders can, dude? Like they can. Okay, again, we don't know anything.
No,
Because apparently, spiders can like ride the wind across oceans.
I have heard.
Have you heard about this?
It sounds like a bullshit.
It sounds like
fact.
bullshit, but apparently it's very true that spiders can ride the. They know they look. We have 5 senses, right? But other animals, insects in particular, they can see ultraviolet light. You know, they know, like birds, for example, they can feel the magnetic poles and like their shifts, so they know where to go and what's the easier flight, route to take and whatever. And spiders apparently are in tune with that electromagnetic field as well, and they can use it to travel thousands of miles in the air. Like it's kind of like, it reminds me of that scene in Finding Nemo when the turtles are riding the East Australian current and they're just chilling and they're just like, this is great. Like it's kind of like that, but it's in the air. So all the shit that we don't really know much, do we?
We don't know anything.
No.
I think we didn't. We talked about this maybe on like the car ride to the Giants game last week about. I have this belief that we've definitely as humans lost senses. We have 5, right?
Yeah, we did
But,
talk about this.
Think about how dulled all of our senses are right now, right? I'm wearing glasses because my eyes suck because I'm looking at a book every day or a screen every day. My feet, my sense of touch on my feet or all of our feet is terrible because we wear shoes every day or socks every day or boots. Our feet are never in contact with the ground. So imagine how much, 100,000 years ago, human sense of touch from their feet and what they could feel through the ground was. Your hearing is terrible. You got AirPods or headphones on all day or loud stuff. You sleep with white noise machines all day. You're dulling your hearing. So like you don't have the same sense of hearing that someone hunting.
We're so soft.
We're so soft. And you think about, all right, all of these senses are no doubt dulled. All of our senses in 2022. 100,000 years ago, how good were our senses? Like we may have had the sense of smell of like a dog back then, or we may have even had a 6th sense for something else that we just lost over time because we got, more civilized and didn't need those senses anymore. So we're so arrogant to think that we're like at the peak of humanity and like technology. We have no idea.
There's that new Netflix special, or series rather, that came out with Graham Hancock.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of it, but I knew about the guy anyway because he's been on so many podcasts talking about this. But the idea of Göbekli Tepe, the ancient ruin that's been uncovered, 12,800 years ago or 12,400 years ago, and to think that, he's absolutely convinced that there was an ancient civilization that was super advanced, and it all got wiped away by this super, what's the asteroid impact event? I forget the name of it specifically, but anyway, it wiped everything out, and it hits the
driest impact theory?
Yeah, exactly. So that hits the reset button, right? And all that stuff's gone. It's like the Library of Alexandria. Like it's all gone. All the knowledge,
imagine how many good books were in that.
That must bother you.
Oh my god. Even when I remember learning about that in like 5th grade, and I was like, what?
Right. They
all
burned
of it?
them?
Why would they do that?
What a bunch of
Oh.
Yeah, that's the thing about Christianity, right? Any dogmatic thing, like it becomes destructive when anything becomes radicalized.
Yeah, when is the side who wants to burn books is never on the right side.
No, absolutely not. Speaking of that, what have you been reading?
What have I been reading? So we can go down different rabbit holes of each of these topics. I read the latest Jack Reacher book. We don't have to talk about that. They're all the same. I'm reading The Power, which is the sequel to The Secret. All about like the law of attraction, which some people say is bullshit and stuff, but for me, it gives me a little like boost every now and then. I believe in the law of attraction. Obviously, you have to fucking work for the shit that you want, but I do believe in that power of like, if you put out positive energy, you receive positive energy, right? It makes total sense.
It does.
So I'm reading that just as like kind of a just a refresh sometimes, just to look at the brighter side of things.
Let me be honest with you for a second. Now, The Power, I think I own that book, and I read a little bit of it, and there's a part of me that just gets uninterested because And it's nothing.
It's a lot of fluff. It's a lot of fluff.
Yeah, I guess we can call it fluff. Because at a certain point me personally, I go, all right, I get it. Like, I have to be more positive. I have to be more, I have to be less stressed out in general about things when they go wrong. But what is it, though, that you keep going back? You love self-help. You love that genre of book. Now, is it, you said a boost. Is it because it just gives you a boost? It reminds you how to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, you need habits of like mental hygiene, for lack of a better term. For some people, it's lifting weights and like going hard at the gym. For other people, it's like, painting. For me, sometimes when I'm feeling like I'm in a rut or whatever, I need self-help books just to like remind me the right way of thinking. Because I think humans' tendency, naturally, all of our tendencies is self-destructive thinking. We overthink everything. We have that constant monkey mind all day telling us what we're doing wrong, or just like, constantly stressing us out for no reason. And the self-help books always, even I'll reread a bunch of them all the time, just because there's so many insights in there just about just like look at a stranger across the room and just like in your head say, I love you 3 times. It sounds so cheesy and like stupid, but you do it, and I promise you'll feel good instantly. You might even smile. And then all of a sudden you got a little pep in your step, and then like you just start thinking more positively. You're like, oh, today's going to be a good day. Like, it's raining out. Oh, great. Who cares? I love rain. And then you just start like reframing stuff, and you're not complaining as much. You're not bullshitting. You're not giving yourself the same tired excuses.
And is that the law of attraction right there? Just you get
giving out positive energy, even if you're doing it just in your inside. Even if I'm looking in this room right now, like, I love this microphone. I love that we're doing this podcast. I love my cousin Keith. He's awesome. I love everything that's going on right now. The weather's great. It's a good time of day right now. These clothes are comfortable. Like, you can't think negatively when you're grateful for stuff. And that's the people think the law of attraction is just like, oh, you want a Ferrari? Let's just like think about it and you'll get the Ferrari. It's not about that.
Yeah, yes. Go on.
It's about some people say like act like the person you want to be. It's as simple as that. If you can distill it down to that, it's one, be grateful for everything. So like just give love out, radiate love, as cheesy as that sounds, or just be grateful. Like every day say a few things you're grateful for, and you can't be stressed out when you're grateful. You just naturally, you'll turn things around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the second one is like you have to act like the person you want to become. So like if you want a Ferrari, thinking about it isn't going to get you a Ferrari, but if you act like a person who can afford a Ferrari or get a Ferrari, you start doing the things that put you in that position.
You'll tuck your shirt in.
Just those
little things add up.
You'll start networking with other Ferrari drivers, asking what they do for a living, maybe getting into the businesses that other people in Ferraris. You just start like exhibiting the behaviors of someone you want to be to get the things that you want. And like tons of famous celebrities and stuff and successful people all attribute a lot of their success to that. Like Jim Carrey has famously talked about it. As funny as it is, Logan Paul, the guy who's now like a freaking huge boxer, but like he's good, dude.
Impulsive, great show.
He's good at boxing because he spoke about it on like podcasts or Instagram. He used to post like Post-it notes on his bathroom mirror that were like, "I will be, a huge boxer."
Yeah, I hate when that happens when people make it through Vine or some social media platform and then they go do something and people are like, "Oh, he's just it's like, yeah, okay, look, he made it through that, but that doesn't mean he as a human. You think that encompasses his that's him, Vine, like that's it. Like, no, he's a human being with other, obviously, and the guy's jacked. He's an athlete. He's determined. He's got, anybody who gains a following like him, you have dedication and you have work ethic like that. And if you apply that to boxing, forget it. You'll be a good boxer. And back to your point, 2 things. I thought of an experiment while you were talking about, just say I love you, whatever. Like, apparently it's a fact that if you just make yourself smile for 3 minutes, you'll just be happy.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like, Lauren makes fun of me because
how was that a bad idea though?
Yeah, because Lauren makes fun of me because I do all these like hacks and stuff. Like some of them are just like, standing with like certain postures that just put you in a better mood. or like looking at the sun, you know, in the beginning of the day, but like they work. Like there's science behind it, but it's also like it's hacking. I spoke about how our brains have natural tendencies to think negative or to have biases, and like it's rewiring or just like dulling those senses and overriding them and saying like, no, I'm in control of like, I'm in control of my thoughts. I'm in control of my actions. Like,
you know, I got to give a shout out to my mother because you just brought up something. You know, I used to suffer, man, from anxiety to the point where I would have panic attacks, like so bad. Like I'd go to the hospital. Like I was like, oh my God, I used to have, I never told you about this.
No.
Dude, I used to.
Maybe once, but I didn't know if it was a recurring thing.
Oh yeah, it happened more than a few times. And I didn't know what the hell was going on with me. Like, and my mom said to me one day, she goes, hey, you are driving this thing. You're in control of your thoughts and your actions. It's not the other way around. Your brain doesn't tell you what to do. You tell it. And it sounds like obvious now, but this was like 10 years ago, before mental health was such a big part of the cultural discussion. And like, I don't know, just hearing that, people need to hear that because that's not so obvious to people who are suffering from a mental, just some kind of a problem where with their thinking, you feel like you're suffering from like an internal tyranny where you're being oppressed from the inside. And she just reminded me, shout out mom, that like you're in control of your thoughts and your action. Like you are driving this thing. And, you know, that's really important to hear, man. I forgot all about that. I mean, now it's become second nature, but that's true.
Well, there's a title of a book. I think it's Joe Dispenza. I haven't read it, but the title is "You Are the Placebo."
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like
yeah, that's what a placebo. Right.
Yeah, like if you're on a medication or something, like whether you're on the placebo or not, like if you feel better, who cares? If it's the medicine or if it's you. But like, I mean, I think you're right. So many people have anxiety, suffer from anxiety, some form of depressive thoughts rather. And it's so common. Like everyone has it. There's not a person out there who's like, oh, I'm not anxious. I've never been depressed. And that's why I read all these self-help books, because like it helps me not fall down those valleys and constantly remind myself, like, you are not your thoughts.
Right.
You are in control. You tell your thoughts who's boss. That's like David Goggins. Like, he just tells his brain to like shut the fuck up.
Right. And my mom was kind of David Goggins in that moment. She was like, listen, dude, you like, what are you even complaining? Like she didn't make me feel like I was invalid, but she reminded me of my power, so to speak, that I'm the one I'm the ghost in the machine. And, you know, all that. One last thing. I feel like we bring up the Beatles every time, but to your point, there's a lyric, Paul McCartney, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. So, like you said, the law of attraction, just saying I love you, just you know, in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. That's why the Beatles soared across the entire globe, because of lyrics like that. There's nothing more true than that. And it speaks to the idea that, you know, you get what you put in at the end of the day.
All you need is love.
Dude.
And it's not getting love. All you need is giving love. That's the key thing. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm not, when they're depressed or they're anxious, like, oh, no, I'm not getting enough love. It's like, no, you have to give love. And you're right. Your mom did an amazing job, because it's so easy to sound condescending to someone when they're in that state, to just be like, oh, just think better. Just think positively. They're like, shut the fuck up.
Like, she wasn't like, what's your problem? Like, no. Why are you depressed?
But it's true. Like I do this all the time. You have to basically tell your mind who the fuck's boss.
Right.
Like, shut up. I'm in control of this.
Right.
And we were so subjective to self-destructive thoughts by our own doing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's why I read all those self-help books, because like the brain is, like we talked about, how little we know about humans and life. The brain is just like, we have no idea.
Oh my God.
It's so intricate, and it's also so malleable in how we can shape it. It's like, they call it plasticity, neuroplasticity. You can change the way you think by just rewiring your thoughts and thinking it differently every day. Going from, I hate this job every single day, to I love this job every single day. You're tricking yourself. You know you're doing it, but it works
Mm-hmm.
and it rewires your brain. All of a sudden you're happier. You're
Yeah.
like, oh wow.
And as powerful as the brain is, it's actually quite easy to fool, which is why optical illusions work.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a picture, it's just lines drawn a certain way, and your brain just can't figure it out. Like, it's actually, but although the brain is very powerful and it's super complicated, I heard a great quote I want to get out there because it's so true. I really don't know who said it, but it was, if the brain was so simple that we could understand it, we would be so simple that we couldn't.
Ooh.
So, in other words, it's never
Bar.
going to end this chase.
Yeah.
Because if the brain was so simple that we could understand it entirely, then we wouldn't be smart enough to understand that. Because do you understand the paradox here?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it needs to be in a way unknowable.
Yeah.
Because then that's the chase of life. That's the chase of it adds to the very spirit of the universe that we live in. Like, you can't quite figure everything out. There's always going to be some part of it where you're like, but I don't know. You know, I like it never ends really in a way.
The other book that I just read that's super heady, now that we're on this subject, kind of mystical stuff, is Many Lives, Many Masters. I forget who it's by. It's some doctor something, Brian something, psychologist, but it's a true story. It got recommended to me by a few people who I take their recommendations, strongly. So I was like, all right, I'll check it out. It's about a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know the difference between the two.
And a psychiatrist is more of a doctor kind of white coat kind of situation.
Okay. So either way, I don't know what he was. But he had a patient who came in and she was suffering from depression and anxiety. Normal girl, like beautiful 26-year-old girl, had a tough relationship with her mother, but like nothing crazy. She wasn't diagnosed with anything nuts. No history that would warrant, wild behavior, erratic behavior or thoughts. And she started telling him stuff and she wasn't getting any better. When like normally after 6 months or so, he's like, normally they'd be getting better. So then he's like, I'm going to hypnotize you if you're okay with it. And she was like, okay, let's try it. He hypnotizes her. And the first time he hypnotizes her, she starts telling stories about her from a first person point of view in past lives. So like in one, she was, a slave in Alabama in the 1850s. In another, she was, a woman working in the fields in the 1500s in like Europe. In another, she's like in Greece, like combing someone's hair. She's a servant there, right? And she starts narrating her lives. And then suddenly, once she's done, she'll switch to a different voice. And she'll talk from the voice of what they call the masters. Well, she'll say basically, we are living a constant life. We are spirits, all of us, and we inhabit physical bodies to learn the experiences in the physical world. And if we die and we don't learn from those experiences, then we go back to another physical body and do it all over again in a different way to learn that experience. It's the same cast of characters every time playing different roles, but they want you to learn that experience. And when you learn and you grow, you move on to the next level of the spirits. And it's super, she goes on to do this. And
but again, why can't that be the case? We don't know anything.
We don't know. So he's like fascinated. He's like, his jaw drops. He's like, what the hell is going on? And she wakes up. She has no memory of it. So then he starts exploring this and documenting it and recording her every week for like a year. And then he brings his wife, who's also a psychologist, who like, because no one believes him. Right. And she is now like a believer. She's like,
Mass
what the hell is
Hysteria.
going on? And it, like you said, we don't know. But I like that idea of the fact that our spirit is always alive. Kind of like, what's that movie, Soul?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Kind of, yeah.
Where like you inhabit a physical body, when you're ready. And let's say in the last life, you owed a debt to someone, for whatever it was. In your next life, you're going to suffer in a way because you didn't pay that debt in the last life. Right. So when people say the world isn't fair or like God is cruel, a lot of it is just, no, you need to learn the lesson from the last life you didn't. And if you were good in your last life, in your next life, you'll be rewarded for it. But I found it interesting that it's the same cast of characters. So in one life, you might be my cousin, but in the next life, you might be my brother or like my father figure.
Interesting.
And so like a lot of times in life, when you recognize someone and you're like, I feel like I should talk to this person, like I'm like, maybe it's that connection or something.
When I met my wife, my wife, when I met Liz, love her to death. Kyle, when I saw her, and I've seen women, right? Beautiful, not so beautiful, whatever. You see them all the time. This is the only time in my entire life where I was scanning a room looking for who's here tonight. We were out at a bar, and I saw her, and I literally, I was like, and again, the feeling is, it's not, oh my God, look how beautiful that woman is. It's the feeling of, like, I recognize her.
I had the same exact thing
with your wife.
It literally felt like a magnet pulled me.
It felt like I thought like, oh, I feel like, but I don't know that.
Turns out I actually did know Lauren.
Well, yeah, because you were in the same class. But I never met Liz. I never, we didn't grow up in the same neighborhood or anything and go to the same school. But then I walked up to her and I literally said to her, I was like, listen, I'm going to marry you. I told her that.
That's right, yeah.
I swear to God, I said it that night. And she was like, okay, whatever.
Where were you? At a bar?
At RJ Daniels in Rockville Center, but it's
that's where a lot of love was found.
A Long Island love story, nothing better. And whatever. But the point is that it wasn't like, oh, she's so gorgeous. It was, and I never do this, but I asked my friend Rob, my good friend Rob. I love him to death. I never ask for a wingman. I don't need help. Like, I'm very extroverted. I don't whatever. But I was like, pal, I got to go talk to this woman. And he was like, why do you need me to come with you? You never need help. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I don't know. I'm nervous. And, it was that feeling of, I know who this is, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'll never really be able to, rectify what that was, but it speaks to this book.
Yeah. And like, there's no reason to not believe like that.
I don't know.
You have no idea. Like, some people can be like, that's bullshit, but like, okay, give me a better explanation.
It was the realest thing it was the only time I've ever felt anything like that.
Me too. It's the same,
weird.
I never had any other experience like that of just like a room stopped and like
everything stopped.
Tunnel vision.
I remember exactly what she was wearing, yellow blouse, black jeans, her hair was up. I remember everything. And it's like, because it's a moment. It's not their beauty, although they're beautiful. It's not that. It's just there's something about like the...
And also, I wonder what the hit rate is on that pickup line. Probably pretty low.
Actually, the first thing I said to her was, realistically, I was standing near her, and she was looking at me like, this guy's going to talk to me. And I think she said to me, are you going to like say hello? And I went, look, I'm saving up money. I have a great job. It's benefits, dental, and I'm going to marry you. And she was like, "Oh, okay." And then I got her number. I put her in my phone that night as Liz's wife. Wow. That night with the engagement ring emoji, and it's still there. But that's incredible. I believe in that. I believe that too, because they say matter can't be created or destroyed, right? So whatever a soul is, whoever you are, your id, your persona, whatever that is. Perhaps it was created in the stardust, billions of years ago. I don't know, man. But like your being, if that's true, it can't go away,
So between that book and the Tim Urban article, like I'm really trying to run towards those urges now. Of when you think you should do something, or you have that like gut feeling, like run towards it. You really should. And when you think you should be spending time with someone you love, run towards that, like, because you don't have a lot of time. Right. You're on this, maybe you're on this earth for a reason, maybe you're not, but like, it's better if you think that you are on the earth for a reason and you're following some sort of path, or you're supposed to learn a lesson or go towards that person who's pulling you. And maybe, there's the religious aspect to that, of you believe that, God has a plan for you, whatever it might be. Maybe it's the law of attraction. But whatever, makes you happier and have that belief that there is a higher power of some sort, I think it's really humbling, and everyone kind of needs something to humble them and realize how small they are and insignificant and how little we know about life.
I agree. And I've come to realize in my life anyway, I'm arguing for the necessity of God, not his existence. That's a great way to put it, right? Like
yes, yeah.
I argue for its necessity,
power, yeah.
but not necessarily its existence. You know, people always go, you know, oh, what? There's a guy in the sky living on a cloud. That's a whole separate story. That's not what I'm arguing, or not but people who are saying what we're saying about the higher power. It's more about its necessity than its existence in a physical sense.
It doesn't have to be a man with a beard. It can be a muse or a magnetic energy or a light or an aura or like a sense, you know? I think everyone's driven by their own internal feeling towards that, whether it's religion or their own, you know, spiritual. Like people roll their eyes when they hear spiritual, but I think, you know, some of it is pretty weird, but
it can get that way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have to, you have to be able to also separate yourself from it, right? Because if you go too far down the religion or spiritual rabbit hole, people just look at you like you're crazy.
It's like people who let their politics now interfere with their personal personal opinions about the world. Like you can have your politics, but once you start letting that creep in too much into your persona, then that becomes a problem. The same thing with your spirituality, same thing with, you know, your religious beliefs and your political beliefs. You still have to remain level-headed and be who you are and all that.
Yeah, I think people, you need, like, I think too many people do merge their religious life or their political life into their personal life, and it is important to separate those two. There's a reason there's a separation of church and state, but also you need to realize how individualistic those opinions are that you hold. And separate yourself and your ego from another person holding different opinions on that. And you have to respect it, because we're probably pretty similar in a lot of our thoughts, but like probably have a lot of different things in how we think about things. And like I have to respect that and also be open to the fact that maybe you have a more interesting look on it, right? So like I may have strong political views, but I also have to have the ability to listen to someone with different ones and be like, oh, that's actually a little bit of a better idea. I didn't think of it that way. And humble yourself to like hold strong opinions lightly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and getting back to the idea that souls, for lack of a better word, can't be created or destroyed. You know, in the book, The Master and Margarita, I will bring up one particular part.
You went on a long rant on the last one.
I know. I'm just going to bring up one particular part of the book where Satan throws a ball, a party. And remember I told you in the last episode that he predicted that one of these guys' heads was going to get cut off?
Yes.
Okay. So that ends up happening. And he's at the party. And like I mentioned, these two gentlemen were, when Satan approached them, they were having a discussion about how atheism is the way, God's not real, Jesus never existed, all that stuff's completely made up. When you die, you simply just die. There's no heaven, there's no metaphysical reality where, you know, your soul is floating around in the universe and living a eternal happiness, whatever. But so Satan approaches them and goes, really? That kind of thing. Anyway, so that guy's head gets cut off through a whole thing. It's very enough. Very good. But at the party, Satan's like making a speech. Hey, everybody, thank you for coming, blah, 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 kind of thing. And he holds up that guy's head by his hair. And he says, you know, Ivan, I think that was his name, Ivan, he was talking about how how it's a fact that you will eventually go into a state of non-being. That's how this all ends. There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no limbo, there's no continuation of you at all. You just go into a state of non-being. He's holding up his head. And then Satan takes a knife and he goes, I'd like to take the honor and the privilege of giving him exactly what he wants. And he cuts all of his flesh off of his skull, peels it off, and then he takes his head and he cracks it open with a sword he was holding. So the top of his head pops off, and then he fills his skull with wine, and he turns him into a goblet, basically. And he says, now you're nothing. You're just an object, just like you wanted. And then he takes a big sip and he cheers to the crowd. And I've always, dude, I got chills just now. But
Russian novels,
dude,
man.
Russian novels, pal. I'm telling you, they're great. And no, but what's so great about it is the symbolism, right? Like, I always loved this kind of mutual respect between Satan and God, or Satan and Jesus, or the devil and the good and evil.
There's yin and yang.
There's this. Satan's basically mocking him for saying such a stupid thing. Like, you think you know what happens, right? And here, I'll give you exactly what you want. And aren't you so happy now, right? Like, and I've always loved that. Like, he was offended that he was saying that God's not real, Jesus never existed, heaven's not a real place. You know, the rejection on his part, he was upset about, because there's this, and it's the same with, like, if you've ever seen The Passion of the Christ, you know, like in the lyrics for Sympathy for the Devil, when Mick Jagger says, I made damn sure the pilot washed his hands before, you know, because there's a mutual respect there. If you're going to do this to this guy, wash your hands first, clean, you know, do it the right way. And, you know, it's funny, like, the whole novel, like, Satan's kind of mad that everyone's rejecting God. And you would think he'd love that. But there's a symbolism there.
He needs the opposite.
Can't exist without the other. It's like it's just like Batman and the Joker.
Yeah.
When Joker says, "I don't want to kill you. What
Yeah.
would I do without you?"
Right.
That kind of thing. And you know, that's why man, those Russian guys, they really can drive it home, so to speak.
Yeah. I was thinking about too why Russian novels are so good, and I wonder if it has to do something with the time and the format of storytelling.
Yeah.
Like why their novels are so long, why they're so like some of the chapters are just like long-winded soliloquies or dialogues, right?
Poetry.
And maybe like that was like the equivalent of like watching, you know, a Christopher Nolan movie back then. And like in Russia, they were just like, we want more of this.
Yes.
And like that's what the writers were like, all right, like we'll make more of those types of things. And then people would like sit around and like read those books for days. And maybe it was during a wartime too, and like people comforted them in some way.
Russia's got a very rich cultural history. A lot of shifting, a lot of huge opinions getting involved, a lot of you know, ideologies being, you know, becoming popular and then being destroyed. And so there's a lot of it's a very romantic history of like passion and changing, and it's such a good Mikhail. I'll say it one more time. Mikhail Bulgakov. It turns out that the Master and Margarita, you had a question about it, like what
is the Margarita?
The Master is a person. And Margarita, we forget because we're from Long Island and there's like margarita slices everywhere. But Margarita is a name; it's a person. So it's the Master is a guy, and Margarita is his lover. And they come into the whole. That's, you know, maybe we'll do an episode about this book one day. But like, I
might have to.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Interesting.
So, all right, what do you think?
I'm good, man.
I'm good. We talked about a good amount of shit today.
I'm winded.
Yeah, I'm winded.
All right,
I gotta go. Read a Russian novel.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.